Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of His Dark Materials. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I think it's so fascinating to know Metatron's single strike hit the entirety of the multiverse. Basically, it's like, right, dust was given to humans, but it's like, nah, like, they've kind of squandered that, and it's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take back the gift that was given to humanity. So, basically, that strike is basically opened a void in all of existence, and is slowly sucking up and spiraling all dust. So that kind of goes back to the point I was bringing up last episode, where things aren't 100% being told 100% in line with each other. Once again, maybe it's just because the time frame in every world is a little different, but the fact is that we saw it first and foremost with the world that Mary's in, and then now we're seeing like it's happening everywhere else. Because she said, well, because Mary had said that it was kind of like slow trickle at first, like the trees were doing everything they could to hold on. Now it's like a flood of the dust being sucked away. So maybe it was just naturally happening. Metatron was always doing this, but he's like, you know what, last straw. Bam, I'm cutting you off like the tap from the tap. It's very reminiscent of, if you've seen The Magicians, that's a prominent storyline, and it's the season 2 finale / season 3's entire storyline where magic was basically taken from humans. That's the whole storyline. So it's kind of almost a similar thing happening here in this regard. So, but first and foremost, let's start off with Azrael being so excited because he's like, right, Metatron's doing this. It means, oh my God, this means that he's signed his deck. Like he can't help but notice me now. You know, like I said, it's a little arrogant where it's like, notice me. You think I'm like the pathetic human screaming up to the clouds, but you've noticed me. I've pushed you to the point. It's like, well, it's other contributing factors beside that. It's your daughter and it's Will and the knife. So there's that. But you've also made your point too. So Metatron's kind of noticed humanity, paid more attention now. He was already paying attention, but he's even more hyper-focused now because of you, Lyra, and Will. Now you add in, like I said, Azrael is super happy because it's like, right, this means our provocation was noticed. Well, the problem is that Ruta ends up dying, but she's stuck in between. Her demon was taken, but the problem is she will never fully know peace because her soul is basically stuck in this permanent purgatory of sorts, which is interesting considering there actually is a purgatory. So I don't know if it's the same, like because the void is different. Like that void is even in the purgatory, the world, the land of the dead that Lyra and Will and the others are in right now. That is a purgatory in its own right. But obviously, Azrael's kind of like upset about Ruta's death, but it's also like, yeah, I don't have time for mourning. The fact of the matter is, this is our great rebellion. And she had sent for Seraphina, and Seraphina shows up in time and wants to know what happened to her sister. And she puts this all on Azrael. Everyone's blaming Azrael. First, Coulter shows up, and she's like, right, our daughter's dead. And he's kind of like, I'm sorry for your loss. It's almost like, my loss? Are you forgetting she's your daughter too, Azrael? And it's just kind of like, you know, once again, my war is too important. This isn't just about me. This isn't just about even our world alone. This is about every world that the authority has under his thumb. Which also, I kept going back and forth last episode. I think it has been a misinterpretation on my part. Metatron is the authority, is the one trying to fill that void. Like, Regent is the position that they were in, but they've kind of taken the position of like, no, I'm straight up. Now, I am straight up the authority. I think I'm still going back and forth on that because I thought the authority left Metatron in charge. I thought that was kind of the point. And not like the authority is like the real authority, but more so like, see what I mean? There's even, once again, even deeper parallels to Supernatural because Metatron was off doing his own thing too, you know? In that regard. So, I mean, maybe that's always a little part of Metatron's story. I mean, once again, I'm someone who's super unfamiliar with the Bible like that, but culture is mad because it's like, yes, I stopped him because he was like, oh, you shouldn't blame yourself for, yes, you built the device they use. And he's like, you shouldn't blame me. She's like, no, I don't. I blame you because I stopped the device in time, but what set things in motion, the weapon that was meant to kill our daughter, what set it off was your provocation. You starting that war with Metatron responded in kind, and that's what led to our daughter's death. So this is on you. And despite everything, because she's like, I will never forgive you, he is a little shaken because, yes, he's never really cared about Lyra, but it's like, right, at very least, he's like, regardless of it all, she's not important, yada, yada, yada. She's at least out there. It's like, fine. He had some solace in knowing that. He's like, well, she's gone. I'm sorry about that, but I got to focus on this. Wait, it was my fault. I'm the one but also because he still loves and cares about Marissa, so it's like hearing her say she'll never forgive him made him worry. So Serafina wants him dead because it's like, cool, because of your provocations, challenging a power you had no right to, because this is your fight, sure, but the fact of the matter is she believes Lyra and Will are the key to everything. You are just, once again, it's the irony that he talks about how, like, almost like makes it seem like Lyra isn't important. Like, this is his war, but it's like, I guess in the grand scheme of things, you can make the argument he's the one that's kind of, to some extent, irrelevant. I think it's just, this isn't your story. This is their story, and you're a part of it. And that's how I kind of look at it. Whereas, like, Azrael's like, look at me, I'm the main character. It's like, sorry, bro, you're not. Lyra and Will are the main characters. You are characters in theirs. It kind of comes down to that. But, because Azrael is a little narcissistic, not to want, he has to kind of make everything about him. It's like, this is my war. This is me. It's selfish and narcissistic enough to have, he holds those traits. And so, it's like, right, you want your revenge for Ruta. Don't take it out on me. Take it out on the authority. So Serafina's on their side. What's also interesting too is like Marissa is like, wants to take the intention craft but can't because Azrael went to the north to see Yorick, and then her demon actually walks away. She's like, all right, come on. And her demon's just kind of like, I'm done, and walks away from her. You're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's almost an interesting parallel to Lyra and Pan, because Lyra kind of walked away from Pan, and now, in this regard, Marissa's demon is walking away from her. So I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but it is an interesting flip on Lyra's circumstances. I just think that's kind of interesting. I feel like they kind of made a point of that, but like I said, that could just be me reading too much into that. Either way, Azrael goes to see Yorick, and his demon's like, I wouldn't get too close. It's like, oh, don't worry about it. He won't do anything. And he knocks him back, and it's like, I should kill you because my bears have, like, basically their home is melted because it's like, cool, you tore a hole in the sky. So, yeah. And it's like, oh, Lyra Silvertongue is like, don't even speak her name. It's like, you gave her name. It's like, yeah, because she's everything you're not. It's like, well, what is she? Lyra's going, it's like, no, she's in the land of the dead. How'd she do that? The knife. The knife's broken. I helped fix it. It's like, she went there to get her friend Roger. It's like, oh, the kitchen boy. He's like, which I should kill you for that too. So, but he was able to go back and tell Marissa the truth after she had this heart-to-heart with Serafina, which Serafina knows what it's like to lose a child. I mean, she cared a lot about Lyra. I mean, Lyra has touched and affected so many people in her journey. The scholars at Jordan who cared for her for the past 12 years. The Egyptians that she crossed paths with, she helped get the children back. Some of their children, some of the other children that were just taken. Was able to return Billy to his mom and his brother. So many people that they've met along the way. And that's the thing about Lyra, is how much she's affected and changed people. It's like, once again, everything, it's very, very neat parallel to Kingdom Hearts reference of the day, like Sora. Everything falls short to this one girl's heart, and her curiosity, her capacity for love, her capacity for caring about people. and how she's able to reach out to people. And even Serafina because for Marissa, it's like she was trying to provoke her into killing her, because it's like, right, get revenge for your sister, but it's like, I'm not going to do that. It's like, well, if you're not going to do it for revenge, do it out of mercy, because she doesn't want to be alive anymore, because it's like, right, her only reason for living is gone. And it's like, I didn't love my daughter. The fact is, I'm incapable of it. But it's like, look at you. You were a monster, but you're not anymore. It's like, despite all the craziness of what she has done, yes, her desire for Lyra was contorted, but it did come from a real place. Because when you actually do look at it, she is not the same woman she was at the beginning of this series necessarily. Like, Lyra, like she has so many others, has changed Marissa as well. It's like, you are a different person. Because I even love that whole thing of like, right, for Serafina, it's like, right, I knew what Lyra was going to do as Eve, but now that's all gone now that she's dead. And it's like, I believe, it's like, she did everything Marissa did everything that she could to stop the prophecy because of what she believed, because of what the Magisterium's pumped into so many people. Oh, Eve is this evil because she's the reason why sin exists. I mean, once again, Marissa did everything she could, not only for herself, but only for her own child, of like, right, we could all be free of sin, and they all believed it stemmed from Eve, and that's why she wanted to stop it. But for Serafina, it's like, that's the Magisterium, using fear, talking about something they don't fully understand, because they were so steadfast in their beliefs and believing like what they believed was all that mattered and nothing else. Like, if anything else stepped outside of that, other multiple worlds, heresy. It's like they refused to go outside of their own box in their beliefs. They refused to expand their beliefs, because from Serafina's perspective, it wasn't sin that drove Eve. It was bravery to her only sin was experiencing life, and it's like that great joy, that was all her only sin. And it's like, and your experiences and love are what shaped you and changed you into who you are now. And that really like sat with Marissa. And so when the time comes, Azriel tells her, I even love it when he hears from Yorick like what Lyra's doing. He's like, my daughter is staging a prison break. And he's like, yeah, that's my daughter, which I think is so funny, because, do correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe that's the first time in the entirety of this series he's ever said the words, my daughter. Like, Coulter said it multiple times, but Azriel's never uttered those words. To like, having rewatched everything, I don't think he ever uttered those words. This is the first time he's ever like, yeah, he's acknowledged like, yeah, you are my child, but I don't think it's ever really been, he's acknowledged it, but he's never, like, he's acknowledged it, but it's always been a passing acknowledgement. It's never been a full acknowledgement until this point, because it's almost like she gets that rebellious streak from me. It's like, kind of, she takes after both of her parents. She can be stubborn like both of them, and she can be quite curious and studious and just as like rebellious as them, So Azriel goes to tell Marissa like, right, and the bears, they can't lie, so Lyra's definitely there. And it's like, and for Marissa, it's like, wow, she's completing the prophecies that the witches said. It's like, it's amazing. So you could tell like there's a little bit of pride in Azriel's face, but you could also tell there's a little bit of jealousy, because it's like, bro, regardless of what she's doing, I'm still the one staging the rebellion. So all that's happening. Really quickly, I do want to say, it does suck about the Gunwi and the Ruth situation, because it feels like they were almost pretend, and I don't know if this is something that just, maybe it was more so in the book, but not in the show. It felt like they were potentially setting up a Gunwi and Ruta thing. To be fair, that was like, they are both generals in this fight, but it felt like there might have been something there. Also, I didn't talk about it. Because I didn't know for sure last episode, but I did forget to talk about Roke. We confirmed it this episode. He died, which sucks. Then, circling back to the land of the dead, Lyra and Will are leading the others, but the complicated thing is they don't know like, especially Will, because he's doubting himself. It's like, right, these people are putting their faith in us, and their very existence is in our hands, and he doesn't know if they'll be able to come through in the end. But Lyra keeps believing. There's also the problem of the chasm there is sucking them in too, because it's sucking in dust, and they, at least in her case, I don't think the rest of them aren't feeling it because the dust has already left them because they're not living anymore. They've lost their flesh. But Will and Lyra still have dust because of, well, their connection to their demons. So it's kind of pulling Lyra in, but it's also kind of pulling Will in, So obviously, there's almost like this little bit of a back and forth between Will and Roger, because it's like, yeah, we're both like Lyra's really good friends, and it's just kind of like, oh yeah, Yorick. It's like, yeah, I already know about Yorick. I've met him before, because they were talking about their adventures from season 1 and just everything that they've been through, and I think that's so interesting, especially later on. It's like, oh, let's jump across this chasm. It's like, I'll go first. No, I'll do first. I can do it. No, so can I. And you see, Lee just kind of smiling and laughing at it, because it's like, yeah, they're very competitive in this moment. It's like, I'm gonna show off in front of Lyra. No, I'm gonna show off in front of Lyra. It almost felt like that to some extent. I thought that was I was actually like, oh, I was like, it wasn't a thing that really got leaned into too much. Once again, it's just one of those things where you wonder, was it kind of cut for the show, and what makes you wonder if this happened in the book? Because once again, I don't know if this show is like a not one-to-one adaptation. Is it more of like it's pretty close adaptation? Is it a very broad strokes adaptation, or what? Or is it a very loose adaptation? I'm curious about that, because like seems like that could have been a thing that got played up even more, like the Will and Roger situation, because Roger could be a little like, yeah, like, you're alive and you're around my best friend, you get to be friends, like that could irk his nerves or something. Like, I could see that being an issue, being something they could lean into, but maybe they chose not to lean into it, or maybe it was never an issue, because it's like, right, we're both older, like, we've both been through enough to kind of know, like, right, this is kind of not the time, and to be kind of caught up in something petty like that. But Lee finds out about John Perry being Will's dad, and he's like, right, I'll be able to find him. Like, I think I know a way of kind of reaching out to him. And so ultimately Lee reunites Will with his dad, and Lyra sits down with Roger, and it's like, right, when I found you again, I thought we could go back to Jordan together, and that's what he thought too. But he knows that the moment he leaves here, they are going to go separate ways. They can't be together anymore. And he talked about, he believed Lyra was always the brave person, but she's like, no, you are always, she's like, I always believed you've always been brave. You're always braver than even me. And Will talking to his dad, telling his dad, I'm sorry, I didn't bring the knife to Azrael. You want me to be a fighter, but I'm not a fighter. That's not who I want to be. I'm sorry, I can't be the person you want me to be. He's like, no, you're so much more. Because for him, it's like, I could never imagine you would grow into the man that you are right now. Just like Lyra's growing into the woman that she has, because it has become, it's like, he's like, yeah, I've only gotten this far because of Lyra, and Lyra feels the same way. I'm like, yeah, I've only gotten this far because of Will. So, but his dad is telling him that the path, once he opens it, it'll set them free. They won't be able to be together anymore, but it's like, right. And he's also like, right, what you're feeling right now is your demon. He's like, beforehand, I made sure your demon was sent to Azrael, which I'm like, I'm wondering who is his demon and what will it look like? I was like, that's interesting. But it's like, yeah, like, the more worlds, with every world you cross, it weakens your bond to your demon more and more, and it leaves your demon vulnerable. You need to go to her. And so, when it's all said and done, his father's telling him that when this is all said and done, don't live in a world, kind of that's not your own. He's like, but you did it, Dad. He's like, yeah, but it tugged on my heart for so many years. Go back home, live there, be with your mom. So, which immediately makes you go, oh, that's kind of heartbreaking, because that means, I guess there's always a possibility of them visiting, but it kind of reminds me of the ending of, spoilers, but it's a movie that's like decades old at this point in time. Because I was talking about it recently as Princess Mononoke. Yeah, the two, oh God. What's her name? Sun? I remember Ashitaka and I believe, was it Sun? They go their separate ways at the end of the movie. I mean, there's always a possibility of meeting up again in some future in that world. And I think the same thing could happen here. Like, I don't know if Will's going to have the knife when this is all said and done. So when they go back to their respective worlds, it might be because Roger's like, right, you go back to Jordan and you stand on the roof for me. Because it was like, that was one of their spots together. So they're both being told to kind of go back to their respective worlds. So I don't know if they'll be able to see each other anymore. Like I said, it depends on if Will keeps the knife by the end of this. He might not. The knife, in fact, might be destroyed. It might be kind of, second Kingdom Hearts reference of the day, it might be kind of like Kingdom Hearts. Once everything's resolved in every game, all the worlds are restored and the barriers that separate them are re-upped. So, like, yes, that's why new pathways have to be found for new worlds you've been to before, whether it be from going from KH1 to 2 to 3 or whatever the case may be, because the walls that separate the worlds are back up. So, I mean, they're always up, even in this universe, but Will he could slice through them. Maybe in the future, like, the knife's going to be permanently broken or destroyed so that no one could ever cross, or once again, maybe Will be the special case because he'll forever be the knife bearer, eventually passing that responsibility on to someone else too. I don't know. But at the end of the day, when the spirits go through, they'll finally be free from all of this, And so, I'd actually skipped over it, but this also plays a little bit into Roger talking about how amazing Lyra is, that she fell, but one of the harpies grabbed her, and it's because the harpy was captivated by her stories, just like how all the other people were inspired too. And it's like, right, for them, they thought like all that there was kind of fear and just selfishness amongst humans. But it's like, right, Lyra's stories of adventure and hope, it's like we kind of feed off of that. And Lyra's like, right, I'm going to give you a name, no name. You're going to be Glorious Wings. And so they strike a deal. And I even love being like, right, it's like, you can't take it back now that you've given me a name. It's like, okay. And it's like, right, I'm going to let you go because as long as you're here, there's no one, like, I need you to go back so that you could tell people, spread the word of my name. And so Glorious Wings is like, right, we shall let those of this place pass if they tell us their stories, no lies, only truths, and they feed off of that, and that's how they'll survive. So that was an interesting development, which part of me is like, because harpies are Greek mythology, right? So, but that story of almost being like this person, like, oh, I'm going to be kind of like a record keeper of like, well, hearing people's stories. I mean, there's plenty of like myths and legends about that, but it feels familiar about someone being the person that keeps people's stories, and I don't know. And interesting inverse to the ferryman, I guess, is kind of what Glorious Wings has kind of become. But I feel like that's some reference that like I feel like I might know it, but I feel like maybe I'm reading too much into it. It feels like that's kind of like a mythology thing all on its own that they're kind of setting up there. That I'm like, that feels like too purposeful, like especially with the name Glorious Wings. Because it's like, right, you can't give out names. And it's like, well, Lyra's like, I was given my name by a good friend, So I thought that was beautiful. And so when they get to the peak, Will cuts open and opens up the paradise. And the first person through is Roger, And for him, it's like it's gonna be okay. I think that might be when he said, "Go back to Jordan and go to the roost for me." They're both going to obviously miss each other and kind of saying their goodbyes. I actually started getting choked up when she was saying goodbye to him and Lee, and even him being like, "Yeah, I get to go. I'm going to go be with Hester." And then and obviously you hear the voices of all of them passing it down. Tell them your story. Tell them your story. Tell them your story. So everyone, like, it becomes this thing where everyone eventually tells other people, hey, everyone whether it's those who are new arrivals here, whether it's, let anyone know that come here, like, hey, tell them your stories. That's how they'll point you the way towards paradise. So I would assume this window is going to stay open permanently. So, and it was beautiful. And what I thought was interesting too is in the world marries, and you kind of hear that voice, those words, and she kind of looks off in the distance. I was like, wait, am I right? Like, because I had brought it up like past 2 episodes. I was like, is the place Mary is that supposed to be kind of like a pseudo new Garden of Eden? I wonder, is that what that's supposed to be? Maybe not. Because I feel like that might be the same world that they cut in, that Will and Lyra cut into, and they might meet up with Mary next episode. But I might be completely wrong in that. Those might be separate worlds, and maybe just because of everything going on, it reached Mary in the world she's in. I don't know. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this takes us. Obviously, Serafina was like, right, what Lyra's done is remarkable, and kind of cutting it deep to Azrael being like, right, it's more important than what you've accomplished, more important than your rebellion. Kind of, and like I said, you can see it kind of irks him a little bit, kind of like, oh, don't put down my rebellion. But it's like, yeah, the time has come. Lyra did it and has broken people free of Metatron's prison, and now he's coming full force. It's like, you know what? I'm done. Gloves are off. You've pissed me off, and guess what? You got my undivided attention, and that's not what you want. So now they have to stand against everything that's coming. And even I forgot to talk about it earlier, but there was also this beautiful moment between Marissa and her demon, because she kind of took like that conversation she had with Serafina, and now knowing Lyra's alive, she's like, right. She's like, I pretend like, so I was like, it does hurt her, but she's always been someone that's able to kind of control her emotions, more so like push them down. Season 2 really made that super apparent when she dealt with the specters and stuff like that, and was able to control them. But in this case, like Marissa talked about, the first time I ever sent you away, it did hurt. It always hurts, but I pretend like it doesn't. And she's like, I'm sorry I did what I did. It wasn't even, at first I tried to justify it by being like, well, why did I do it in the first place? It was out of curiosity. It was like, no, it's because if you notice, she's always had this very like abusive relationship with her demon. Like her demon wants to hold her hand, she'll push him away and then like kick him and get angry at him because he represents everything. Like he's her soul and all her emotions, the things she keeps bottled down. Once again, he's a physical manifestation of that. It's like, I had to keep you at a distance because you were everything, all the feelings, everything that I was feeling that it felt like I couldn't bear. So I kept you at a distance. It's basically like, not only are you my soul, you're kind of my heart. And I want to apologize. Can you forgive me? You know? Because she's kind of cut herself off from her emotions because that was her only way that she could find a way to survive, to deal with, I think, everything that she's been through. Her marriage, Lyra, Azrael, like all of it. You know, everything that she had to do for the Magisterium. She kind of had to, anything that she felt was too heavy for her to bear, her demon represented that, so that's why she kept him away, to kind of numb herself, to push her emotions deep, deep down inside. So she literally looked at her demon as like a representation of all her weakness she felt, you know? But she asked her demon for forgiveness, and her demon gives her a hand. So it's like, I think she's in a, but once again, continuing to evolve, to continue to change. But at the very end, the time has come. We're entering the final push to the end all be all, and the next 2 episodes are the final episodes of the show. So once again, I'm so surprised. It's just like, I think it's so interesting that HBO decided to do that, but I'm like, okay, I guess I really would have loved to be able to kind of just take time to but I mean, hey, you know, it still wasn't like the entire season was dropped at once. We still slow dripped our way there. But yeah, I'm very, very excited to see where the penultimate episode as well as the series finale takes us with all of this. How will this all play out? It's going to be interesting too, because like Lyra's parents are kind of united, and Serafina's final words are like, right, do not fail her this time. So they're both united. I think finally together to be there by Lyra's side is definitely going to be interesting, considering she has very, very complicated feelings about both of her parents. But we'll see how that ends up playing out, and how, once again, the story comes to an end as a whole. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.